That first year, we got 650,000 subscribers across Canada. A few years later, every single news organization in Canada followed suit. I go back to my race and I remind myself, I'm not there to fix the product, which is down, but what I am there to do is help the customer escalate it.
Welcome to CVM Stories, the podcast on customer value management. Together, we explore how companies can be more successful and the customers happier through the use of latest customer value management techniques. Learn key commercial and analytical insights from telecoms, retail, finance, and other industries that drive CVM forward.
Hi, I'm your host, Egidius. Today, our guest is Katarina Radman, a customer success executive at one of the largest telecoms in Canada. Katarina will share her invaluable lessons on customer success and value management for large enterprise organizations. Get ready to learn a lot, so let's dive in. Hi, Katarina.
Good morning, Egidius.
It's really good to see you, to talk to you today. We are like I don't know, in 7 or 8 hours difference in totally different sides of the world.
That's right. But it feels like you're just across the table here. I know I'm in North America and you're in Europe, in a lovely country, very envious. And I'm very happy to be talking about customer success with you today, Egidius and Exaxeter.
So thank you, Katarina, for joining. Could you tell us a little bit about your career story so that the people who would be listening would slightly better understand your context? Where are you coming from?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've had a very diverse career. My foray into customer success zigzagged a little bit throughout my early years. But I'm happy to share with you that I began my career ostensibly in North America and Europe, working for NATO in a very unique and specific kind of role, which, we're talking close to 25 years ago. The term customer success didn't even exist back then in the way that we know it today. And at the time, I was very junior, just out of school, I'd gone to the United States following my master's and my BA, which I completed in Canada. I arrived in Washington, eager and fresh to start in the mid-1990s. Clinton was the president. I distinctly remember that. And in my role, I worked as a program and project manager and coordinator for a division of NATO, which at the time was called Partnership for Peace. What this program was earmarked to do was really work very closely with the Central and Eastern European countries that had emerged out of the Warsaw Pact and were newly independent. So if you think of the Baltic states, Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary, a few of the former Eastern Bloc states that are their neighbors, we were working on democratization projects, capacity building, things of that nature in conjunction with the European Union. It was a fantastic experience and you really kind of hit the ground running. You were doing a lot of communications and project management, but in working in partnership directly with the governments of these countries, there is a very unique element of what I would call customer success. So the metrics of, how you would gauge success, what that looked like from a feedback perspective and, that whole hygiene funnel. I did that for about 6 years until the program shut down because the majority of the countries I supported had at this point already entered NATO, and they're still in that organization, which is fantastic to see. So what had happened was I applied for something called a Fulbright Fellowship as a NATO employee, and that took me to Harvard. So I went back to Boston and I studied communications management, which with real focus on technology, because I knew I would be returning to Canada when that was completed. And I did begin my technology career in Canada in the mid-2000s, working primarily with software companies, technology companies. This was kind of the early days of SMS and MMS technology. So I was fortunate to enter that field. Yeah, you remember that?
Yes.
Little bit of a footway into customer success, as it was known then, from the product management side of things. And then I went into, I worked for a very large Canadian company, which kind of made its mark and had patent rights for MMS and SMS From there, I went to American Express Concierge. I was there for a few years, and that role led to a very iconic role with, what we call the Canadian New York Times. It's Canada's national news organization, the Globe and Mail. Again, digital products, subscription products, a little bit of product management, more so the customer success side because my clients were so diverse. And it was in that role that I was introduced to the organization, which I'm so proud to be with today. It's one of the three large Canadian telcos. We'll get to that in another podcast. But this is where I am currently as a customer success executive. So, really blending and marrying those fields that I have a strong background in, which is communications with clients, program and project management with those clients, and a huge focus on, the metrics and the things that you need to do to be successful when you're client facing. And that's what brought me into customer success in the last 10 years of my life.
Katarina, you are in a very, very interesting area because if I understand correctly, you are working with large enterprise organizations and you are kind of working with this customer success function. Could you give us a little bit of a taste? What does it mean to manage a customer success for large enterprise,
Yeah, definitely. It's it's a very unique and very honorable role. You're working with large customers that have, an employee footprint of anywhere from 500 to, 1,000 and more, often a lot more. I'm very fortunate in the sense that I have a nice split of customers today. So I have segments that touch, technology. I have a lot of segments that touch healthcare, which is an interesting segment on its own. What the role really looks like is a lot of, funnel management. You're really looking at the data of what these customers are doing, how are they interacting with you, what kinds of purchases are they making. So from a loyalty and retention perspective, I'd say 25% of my time, sometimes even more, is really occupied with looking at the habits that the customer has, unveiled. A lot of the role is really managing expectations with the customer, guiding them through the life cycle, the journey, the buying cycle.
Mhm.
And that's interesting as well because as you get to know these customers, you see trends begin to emerge. Many of these large enterprise customers have a life cycle of 25 to 36 months when it comes to purchasing. These are huge decisions for them because you're dealing with the millions, and there are many stakeholders that are involved. So the buying process will take a little bit longer than it would possibly in other segments. Another large portion of the job is really that customer relationship building. Points of contacts will change. You'll build a strong relationship with somebody at the executive level who might leave or be replaced. And so it's really a lot of that relationship building and networking as well. But I'd say if I was to look at the real crux of what makes it unique is at the enterprise level, you are definitely looking at how can we retain them, right? How can we retain that base? But at the same time, what additional pieces and context of value add can you provide? Because they're often going to come to you and say, well, it's interesting. I've been your customer now for 10 years, but I heard, from a competitor or a colleague at another organization that ostensibly your organization offered them a better deal as a net new customer than you would have offered me as a loyal customer. So how do you counteract that sentiment? And on the flip side, when I look at those trends and that data and their habits, how can I use the data to make more informed decisions about this customer at certain stages in that life cycle throughout the quarters? That really is the role. And between what I've just described and the day and the week, there are other things that come in, but I'd say the customer success role should really be focused on how do we retain that customer, because it's a lot
Yeah.
more difficult to you know regain them once you've lost them.
Mhm.
But at the same time, when you have them, what can you continue to do to improve that value add and that experience so that you're honoring their loyalty throughout the life cycle?
from my perspective, I have way more experience in, let's say, consumer side or SMB side, where you think about, okay, the contract, we need to prolong the contract, so it's like we have 2-3 months left till the end of the contract, then we shoot some campaigns, and that's it. It seems that your world is way different. Thing is, like, you have like a 2-3 years planning in advance, basically. So it's like more like a chess game, if I understand correctly. Kind of, how do you set up for this
Yeah.
long process?
That's a fascinating point, actually, Gidis. I'm glad you mentioned that because, like you, I also had a period of time in the organization with which I'm in right now. When I began, right, 5 years ago, I was actually in a product manager role at the SMB level. So going from that role to the new one in enterprise, I do see where you're coming from. There are definitely some distinctions because, like you said, when I was in the SMB and to some extent the mid market space, that planning cycle is a lot shorter. It's more truncated, and you kind of churn out these campaigns. Get those numbers that lead to EBITDA, and everyone's happy, right? As long as you've got those quarterly numbers rolling in. But
Yes.
yeah, there's definitely a market difference with enterprise in the sense that there is a lot more expectation of patience and you're in it for the long haul. For example, the sheer life cycles are going to be anywhere from 36 months to 60 months. So with a 3-year span for renewals, or 60 months is 5 years, you're not just sitting back and enjoying the ride. There are a lot of components that are moving within that 3 to 5 year cycle. I can tell you that even with the 3-year cycle, if we renewed them in 2022, you better believe that as of late 2023, myself and anyone in the customer success enterprise field is already going to be looking at, okay, well, they have 20 months left on this contract. I need to start talking to the right stakeholders now and have those touch points on a quarterly basis. In addition to that, I have to seep in a campaign at least once a quarter, twice a quarter, to continue to gauge their interest, kind of judge what they're going to be doing 36 months from now. And what you do is you take those touch points, whether it's a meeting or some other forum that you're in, to kind of gauge what are they going to do with that budget 2 years from now. But you got to plan that much earlier in advance because we know that these stakeholders start allocating that budget in quarter one of any fiscal year. So if we don't catch up and figure out what they're going to do, we might lose out on an opportunity. Sometimes those opportunities present themselves in unique ways, whether it's a client-facing meeting, a lunch. You might meet up with them at something like Mobile World Forum and hear that they're going in a completely different direction. You don't want to have panic alarms setting in thinking, okay, well, if they're thinking about, 5G and we're already
Yeah.
discussing something else, I better touch base with them to see what's going on here, right? But I think continuously providing value add throughout that that cycle is really important. But people really underestimate how important this is. Meeting in four eyes just to get a sense of, are we still on track for renewals? Are we still on track for business in 2026? Because my organization might change in focus as theirs might as well. Longer cycles, and more patience for that cycle time is what's needed.
So, how many stakeholders do you typically need to work with when you think about kind of planning this account further?
At the enterprise level, in my own experience, in large tech companies, it can be anywhere from 10 to 20. And I
10
say
to
that with
20.
I say that with
Wow.
reverence. Depending on the product, the C-suite might actually loop in the subject matter expert, right? So you might start that discussion with somebody who is your peer at the VP level, but where things will go during that 24 to 36 month conversation usually rest with a cluster of individuals that have operation management experience, the technical know-how, and the product, right? And that senior stakeholder will often defer to somebody at that mid-level because they're actually the individual who knows the most about what the company is going to get from the product that we're trying to sell, or what we call the biggest bang for the buck. But as I said, the VP is actually physically the person who's signing the contract. So the senior director of product or the VP of product can easily sway that C-suite, particularly when the C-suite individual is new to the organization, right? Let's say we're knee deep into a 36-month renewal about a specific type of upgraded technology software. Some new C-suite's coming in, he's going to defer to the VP of product, who's going to defer to the director, and all of a sudden you're in a forum where you're a month away from signing and there's 10 new faces, right? It happens a lot.
So my question is, in this extremely complex environment, how do you keep all the things together, So kind of what is the secret sauce?
Yeah, the
from
secret
your side?
sauce is really relying on the value add that the organization provides. In this case, let's say it's my organization, doubling down on that value prop messaging, what differentiates us from our competitor, how we have seen success before working with the company in question, right? The elements of value add that we've provided, and also the reliability of the product that we're trying to renew or sell in this situation. Oftentimes, we also rely on the relationships that we've built over years and decades with that client's individuals, right? That can also lead to a lot of success right there. But I think it's really looking at the scope of the long-term relationship, as well
Yeah.
as the value add and the reliability of the product that's being sold.
Mhm.
I think the thing that many people forget to include in this ingredient or the secret sauce is that element of trust, right? If you've been speaking to a customer for 36 to 60 months, whether it's about a renewal or just an ongoing relationship, you really want to establish a level of integrity and trust, and you'd be surprised how much that plays into a factor, especially during a large multi-complex system purchase that's in the millions.
Mhm.
That is really an element that is often overlooked.
Okay. And Katarina, the thing is, like, you have a lot of stakeholders. I believe that quite these stakeholders have a lot of touch points with your organization. And like, how do you keep yourself up to date to what is happening with the
Yeah.
account?
Well, I'm currently with a very large, Canadian telco, but we do have frequent touch points internally as well. So we have weekly meetings, I'll say at the director level and among my peers, other customer success managers and executives. We have a monthly touch point with our C-suite as well. And we're actually very close to them. We don't have to jump hurdles to reach a VP, right? I think that's also very important. Any organization which is very nuanced and structured in the sense that you can't reach out to a VP and find out what's happening on the ground at their level, that would be a cause for concern, right? Where I'm at right now, the level of transparency, it's there, and if information that might change, the nature of a relationship with an enterprise client was being discussed, I would certainly know about it within the first few days.
Okay, so kind of you have really fast communication cycles
We
that
do. And we have
actually.
multiple forums throughout the week and throughout the month where we can engage with those stakeholders, either to feed them the information that they might need before going into a client facing meeting, but vice versa as well, where they might tell and communicate to us something that we might not hear from the client, but they've heard, right?
Mm-hmm. Do you use any kind of technology processes, etc., just to kind of just to keep track of what your guys do?
Yes. So, I mean, this is not proprietary secrecy or anything like that. Like many large organizations, we use Salesforce. That's no secret, everyone's using it. And this is how I keep myself accountable and how others keep themselves accountable within the organization. From a PSO perspective, there's a lot of training, a lot of investment in this software tool. I can tell you that I live in this software tool. And I document just about everything because I think many of the things that we consider hygiene, it's not just checking a box. It's really kind of filling in, your planning cycle and capturing it as well as you can for anyone that might need to know or who interacts with the client as well. But also about leaving that footprint in there, whether you stay or go. That hygiene and that resource, that footprint will remain. So I use it religiously. I really rely on it as a tool. We have other tools as well, but if I was to speak primarily about, a life in the day of a customer success executive at the organization that I work at, it is the one tool that I use all the time. I log in at, early mornings, and it will be the last tool I update right before I end my day.
Mhm. And so I understand that you are really religious about kind of logging everything, all the interactions and insights and everything. How do you convince the rest of the team to do the same?
Yeah, that's a fair point. We are dedicated to using it. We have, training forums within the organization to bring anyone up to speed. Multiple reminders to tell people to go in and check their hygiene and make sure they're updating their hygiene. And this is kind of trickled down from the executive level downwards. So that message is strongly reinforced, I'd say, on a daily basis. The funnel that we use also, feeds other metrics. Other types of dashboards that we use are built out of the Salesforce tool. So if you're not going in there and capturing important data, important conversations, important touch points, it's going to be missed in other metrics. And this really encourages people to remind themselves to do it. We have weekly forums where we meet as a team to just kind of go in there. If anyone's forgotten, this is your hour to go in and do it. And then you're also reminded before that last week, which is that frenzy, the end of the month, particularly when it coincides with end of month and end of quarter, right? That I would say is
Yeah.
super important. I actually act as an advocate on my team as well, sort of the unofficial designated advocate to go in and remind my peers, hey, you need to go in there and do it. If you're struggling, you can always reach out to me. I can show you some tips and tricks. But I live and breathe in it. Maybe more so now in this role than I've ever done before because we've also got a nice elevated suite. I really consider it a bird's eye 360 view footprint of your customer. If you're not in there, you should be.
I understand that kind of documenting every aspect of what you do with a client is one of the key, let's say, success factors for you. How would you define a perfect customer success process for enterprise contracts, like life cycle management, basically? What would be your ideal case?
Ideal case. That's a good question. I've never been asked that before. Well, if I was to, look at a clean slate, you got a new customer assigned to you, I would say your first week is going to be really kind of research, right? Go in, use the tools that are available to you to start looking at what this customer's relationship has looked like over the past couple of years with your organization. If there hasn't been one, there are many tools you can use to kind of look at what their priorities are, right? And let's say you don't have a relationship with them. They've never purchased or spent with you. They've never even interacted with you. And I've been in that scenario. What I've gone and done is, we've got a tool where we can go and research the customer. It's got a nice recap of what their C-suite or, the what their annual report has said are their priorities for this year and the next few years. Based on that, I would go into my documentation tool, whether it's Salesforce or another one, and I would start working on a customer success plan. So in that plan, I would start including what I know to be their priorities. I've already looked at who are the key stakeholders at the level that we want to engage with, start documenting those individuals and build out your 1 year plan. you can't go further than that at this point because you don't know them. That 1 year plan will include the sorts of touch points you plan to reach out with, whether it's cold calling, email, possibly a campaign, or they're going to be at that big event that you're going to be at. So that's the right opportunity to reach out, begin that soft discussion about, hey, can we meet up? Interested in your long-term plan for this year? I think we have a solution, a product that would augment and complement what you're trying to do. And I'd love to spend 20 minutes over a coffee just getting to know you. That's really the best way to start.
That sounds kind of like a really deep and good preparation.
Yeah.
But what I like from this, it's like that you don't think about what you can sell, but you think about what are their objectives.
That's right. And that's where a lot of customer success struggle. I think customer success really needs to start thinking bigger than the, hey, I've got the best solution in the world and this is why you should buy it from me, right? Whereas objectively, what they should be looking at is, what are the priorities of the customers? What are the challenges that they're facing right now? And how can we help them solve those challenges, right? Because if you begin the discussion from what, let's say you're my customer, Gideon, and I'm setting up a meeting with you, I would like to know where your top 3 challenges are, because then I can start thinking outside of the box in terms of how I can support you in turning those challenges into wins, right? See how I'm not pushing a product on you? I'm not pushing a solution. I'm really trying to develop a sense of what is the root cause of why Egidius's firm or Egidius's company is experiencing these challenges, and how can I and my organization come in to support him, to kind of figure out what we can do to help you solve them, right? When you start using the word solve versus I'm going to push a solution on you from the get-go, I think you're going to see that the natural course is a conversation will develop. And that's probably the biggest win you can have in that moment, because it opens the door to trust.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like you're actually building trust there. And do I understand correctly that in business, you're actually selling the trust first and then everything else?
Absolutely, 100%. If the trust and the integrity isn't built, and it doesn't come out in the first few interactions, especially with a new customer, right? Why would you think they would want to buy from you, right? I mean, if you think of your own purchasing habits and your own buying habits and trends, you'll usually go to a supplier where you've had success with before, where you've had an established relationship, right? There's that soft element of trust. But much like any relationship or transaction, I'm pretty confident that at this level and within this segment, trust is a very, very important factor. And sometimes it's overlooked. But I can see that with many of the customers that we have, particularly in healthcare, trust is such an important element, because they're not going to be spending one time with you, right? If they're purchasing a lot within an important segment like healthcare, they'd like to know that not only is it reliable, but that your word matters. You as an individual and the way you present yourself outwardly facing as a representative of your organization, you're trustworthy. If they trust you, they're more than likely to trust the solution or the product that you're trying to pitch to solve their challenge. I think it's really often overlooked, but I'd like to double down on that, and I'm glad that you called it out.
If you are interested in customer value management, check out our customer value management body of knowledge. CVM Book is a comprehensive guide for CVM professionals, offering tips, tools, and best practices to help you in your job. Visit cvmbook.com for more.
Katarina, do you have your own trustworthiness formula? What are the key ingredients?
I do actually, and they're hard to kind of bake down. You can't really a teaspoon of that, a shake of that. I think it's a lot of, do you do what you say you're going to do, right? It can be small things, but if a vice president says to me, I'd like to see a service action plan, I'd like to see an SLA delivered in my inbox by Friday morning, I'll be sure to get it to them that very same day. If somebody says to me, I'd like to see a lot more about the value propositions of a certain type of product, or can you explain to me when you all say you guys provide the most reliable end-to-end solution coast to coast, what does that actually mean? Break it down for me. I will break it down for them, and certainly try to do that before they're hunting me. Hey, remember we reached out 2 weeks ago? Where is it? I think those small steps can help to build a lot of trust, but I also think that there is an individual element to it as well. So, in client facing meetings, if you're very boastful, arrogant, brash, that's just not going to work. Particularly with certain segments in enterprise, these are seasoned veterans and they'll see right through the cracks, right? What they want is a slow and nuanced approach, and they want to be speaking with somebody who displays an element of trust, who has a human story to bring to the table. That's really important in a day where all we're doing is sitting behind a computer or trying to push something, right?
Mm-hmm. It's really funny that we are talking about, enterprise segment, but in this enterprise segment, the most important aspect is the human aspect.
It is. It is. It really is. If I was to be buying $14 million worth of
Mhm.
technology from company X, I would hope and pray that I'm actually dealing with somebody that is a human being and that they are intimately familiar with the challenges that I and my organization currently face, right? Because that's a lot of money. That's a lot of OPEX and CAPEX to be discussing at anyone's level. And when ink is signed to pen, I also want to be very, very encouraged that day two, I pick up that phone and that level of support is there. And oftentimes I feel that is what the real struggle is about. They all know that once that contract is signed, it's done, right? How
Mhm.
can I ensure peace of mind? How can I ensure that the customer knows that once that contract is signed, that day two person is going to call my organization, and that level of support that we talked about for 36 months does exist. It's not just something we speak about at face value. It's there, it's built out, and it's ready to go.
So we touched a little bit. This interesting part is like the concept of day two. Yeah. So there's like the first contract signing, and then
Yeah,
there's everything else.
that's it.
So how do you distinguish these two roles? Kind of
Yeah,
it's like sales and then customer
you
success.
got it. Yeah.
How do you kind of collaborate with between those two?
It's often called the gray zone, but it really isn't. If you look at the the relationship that is built up until the point of the contract being signed, I'd say that's sales driven. But I do believe that the customer success individual often complements and marries sales, especially during the entire process to get that contract signed. But where it differentiates is really that day two, because from day two onwards, it is customer success, right? The
Hmm.
sales
Yes.
individual is the hunter, the customer success
Hmm.
individual is the nurturer or the gatherer, right? And many
Hmm.
times they feed sales the data that they see following that day two process. But I would say that is the distinction. Day two onwards is the customer success's role, right? Where that differentiation often gets tricky is during retentions and renewals, right? Because then it's a little bit of both and it's hard to decipher who's actually leading this versus who's driving it. Um, Day two is customer success, absolutely 100%. But if they're not there throughout that entire negotiation journey, acting as the trusted advisor and reassuring the stakeholders and that C suite that don't worry, when those hands change and the contract signs, myself and my team will be there to guide you every step of the way. We're not going to leave you in the dark. We really won't.
And how much of, let's say, the power do you have to make sure that the implementation stage is, smooth for the customer? So they sign the contract, the kind of deployment or
Yeah.
connection process happens, and kind of do you have authority to make sure that the issues are resolved fast, or
We do.
how?
We do. We're often working in tangent with the project manager and the implementation team, the delivery
Mhm.
solution team. On many occasions, we will actually be the one kind of not going to say dictating the terms, but building out the ideal deployment plan based on what we know the customer wants. So if they've ordered 3,500 components and they need them implemented at various units across the country, and I know the schedule, right? Like I know that East is going to be a priority, West comes later. I don't. I have to trickle that information down to the implementation manager that that there's going to be a split in terms of priority. And I'd say that we have a lot of frequency of touch points with those individuals as well. Oftentimes they'll lean on us and say, "Hey, you have the customer relationship. I'm either newly assigned or kind of late to the game. What can you tell me that will help me build this plan out stronger?" So yes, in answer to your question, we have a lot of um, con- collegiality with these individuals. We work with them very closely, and oftentimes we know them quite well. So we can, I wouldn't say dictate the terms, but I would say uh, support them to ensure that our customers supported in the way that we know they'd want to be.
So it's kind of you're the advocate of the client, basically, and making sure that kind of the client succeeds with it and
Yes.
help out teams.
You're the voice of the customer, absolutely, and you can build various vehicles to distribute to the other individuals within the organization who get involved at the day two level, whether it's the IM, the PM, or whoever not. I often build an entire package for them because, like, here are the things you need to know about this customer. This is their cycle. This is how they split the organization in terms of priority. And happy to meet with you to kind of discuss or even look at the plan that you've built out to see if you need to tweak it or nuance it to this specific customer.
So this was like a very interesting topic. Another interesting topic for me is like when we talk with think about enterprise customers, it's usually kind of a staged approach to enter larger organizations, like land and expand mode. So are you working with this as well, or this is a sales uh, let's say part?
It's definitely sales driven.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely sales driven. But I've never been in a scenario where they haven't included customer success. It's really doubled down that they should, particularly as they know that once day two happens, it's customer success moving forward and they're on to the next opportunity. I've been very fortunate in the sense that I have great relationships with my sales leaders and my sales team. We really think of each other as an extension of that entire span of the customer relationship. I meet with them almost frequently, daily, if you will. So if there's no reason for customer success to be in a forum, they would tell me. Um, but I touch base with them every single day. Yeah, we're pretty much a married couple.
it,
Absolutely.
it sounds really inspiring that you are guys working in a really large organization, but still it seems that you have such a good collaboration between so many different functions. That's unbelievable. Uh,
I think that speaks to the culture of the organization as well. I have heard that's not always the case, that there seems to be a push and pull factor with some organizations when it comes to sales and customer success, that they may not even work together or get along. And that's really a shame because they're truly part of the same shell. If they don't see that the value in that, then that friction will definitely be displayed in any customer facing meeting, right? And I think it should be resolved early on, who does what specifically. But when it comes to anything customer facing, they should present a united front.
mhm. Yeah, definitely. Now, if somebody is thinking about a similar career in customer success, working with large enterprises, what would these people need to learn and build so that they would become, let's say, good or great customer success experts?
I think that if you're building a customer success and sales function into any new or existing organization, maybe the most important thing to do from the very beginning would be to clearly define what that role and responsibility looks like across both segments, sales and customer success. And possibly the easiest way to do it would be to begin with a RACI chart of presumed roles and responsibilities, right? Map out at least, I'd say 10 to 25 top, and then use 2 to 3 cycles of quarters to see how realistic that RACI chart looks after the fact, right? Because in the first year, you're going to see that you're probably going to be tweaking it a lot. But after that first year, or even after the first 6 months, see where you rest at, and then take a real, sit back and think, so this is what they actually ended up doing, right? Because
Yeah.
the other challenge is going to be, how are you going to gauge success, right?
Mm.
Those individuals and
Yeah.
those teams are going to be marked at the end of the year for performance. So where is the weight going to be on customer success? Is it really a lot of what they thought was going to be day 2 but turned out to be day 1? Because that should technically be sales, right? How do you define those 2 roles is really going to determine the success of that organization. And there's no magic formula, there's no secret sauce. Be ready to pivot, be ready to learn, and be ready to switch gears if after a few quarters what you thought was customer success actually turned out to a lot of customer service or service management, or SLA or retention. Yes and no. Like they shouldn't be jumping in every single time the customer has an escalation because the product's down. Well, that's product. But how do they loop those other teams in, right? So take a look at that RACI, adjust and tweak it as need be, until you kind of align on something that seems to fit the pattern of what you're seeing quarter over quarter.
And how do you see yourself, kind of, because it's also customer success is a very role in between, you don't own the product, you don't
That's right.
own the delivery, etc. But you stitch
You stitch it all together.
everything.
Yeah. You're the stitcher of the quilt.
Yes. So I think your RACI matrix is like 100 different responsibilities,
Yeah. How do I see myself? That's a good question. I often have to kind of tap myself on the shoulder when I see myself jumping into every service escalation. I go back to my RACI and I remind myself, I'm not there to fix the product, which is down, right? But what I am there to do is help the customer escalate it. So if the service team isn't robust enough to, fix it or provide a root cause analysis within 1 week, something is challenging, and that needs to go to, the director or the C-suite of that team. I'm continuously having to jump out of situations because it's not within my role and responsibility. But what is my responsibility is a reminder that I am the voice of this customer. If that service issue, if that SLA, or if that promise from the implementation team hasn't been delivered, then I need to escalate this to those seniors to do better and to remind them that, hey, see this, RACI? That's not on customer success. It's actually on you guys. Okay. So how can we do better to ensure that this customer is mitigated in the fashion and in the way in which they deserve based on the contract that we've provided?
If I understand correctly, you're not doing the job, but you are the person who makes sure that the job is done.
You got it. Yes. Yeah.
It's very, very, very interesting. Katarina, we will move to the wrap-up stage of our discussion today. And I would like to ask you 4 very interesting questions. So question number 1 is, throughout your beautiful career and very interesting career, what was your proudest moment in it?
Oh, geez. That's a difficult question. This particular year was an interesting one. In Canada, we're facing a lot of headwinds, which I'm sure you read about in the news cycle. A lot of things that are changing and shaping the country that I live in are top of mind. And given the uncertainty that's unfolded over the past couple of months, I was most surprised, I should say, and honored and truly privileged to have won, the highest award within my current organization for customer success. It was absolutely wonderful and astounding considering the kind of year we've had. It's been a wild ride, but it really speaks to the level of care that I provide my customers. And I was really, really honored and privileged, first of all, to support some of these customers. Some of these customers are icons in Canada. But even beyond that, I know that they face some really, really hard challenges as we all have, right? To see some of the testimonials that came in really brought a nice smile, tears to my eyes. I just was really floored. I'd say that in the last 25 years, this is one of the nicest acknowledgments that I've ever received um, in one of the most difficult times in the economic cycle of this country. So I'm really, really, really proud of it. But if I can say one more thing, one of the other accomplishments that I'm very proud of was the accession to full NATO membership of some of the countries that I supported in Central and Eastern Europe, particularly the Baltic states. I have so many friends in those countries to this day, to this very day. To see what's happening in the world right now, and a reminder of the insurmountable, indispensable things we were able to do 25 years ago really warms my heart, especially as somebody that came from Europe, to see them thriving and doing well, not just as independent countries, but you see these names come up in technology and business, and I'm just so proud that they've had a chance to stand tall and independent, and to know that I was a little kernel of that success. It's something that is really life changing, and I feel very honored. Yeah.
I wanted to personally thank you, Katarina, for contributing to our
Thank you.
freedom and our security, so that we have this opportunity to have this podcast with you
Yeah.
because we
Yeah.
are free.
Yeah, I worked really closely with, well, and I know him personally very well, Jon Baldwin Hannibalsson. It's probably him you should be thanking more than me, but yeah, it's really nice to see the Baltics at the forefront of just about everything these days, whether it's technology, customer success, you name it. I mean, the Baltic countries are truly showing their colors and stripes in ways that are really wonderful to see, especially on the basketball court. But that's a topic for another podcast.
Good. Throughout the same career, I bet you have had some challenging moments, or could you share an episode or two from this side as well?
Yes, absolutely. One of the challenges that I experienced throughout my career happened about 15 years ago when I was working for Canada's largest national news organization. The organization was thinking how to do something which was considered impossible in 2010, and that was take free news content, completely free, on the website, on the digital products. How do you take that and now start to change a customer habit and ask them to pay for it? Basically, force them to pay for it. And it was a real challenge. Conversations throughout the organization went on for over 12 months before we even built out a plan, right? And everyone had an opinion, and everyone's opinion was so divided and mired in controversy. But in the end, we actually took note of what our partner was doing in the United States about how to build slow audience habits, which were really about building a paywall, right? So after 5 free articles, you got to pay this, right? And at what point do you stop? Like, how do you segment your audience to understand who are those most loyal that come to this website or this digital property every day? How do you ensure that you're not going to lose them by putting in a hard payment option? Um, that project took 3.5 years to build and pivoted at every every point you could imagine. But finally, in 2013, it happened. It became live. And we had a lot of reservations. There was a lot of, hushed voices. People were holding their breath. And that first year, we got 650,000 subscribers across Canada. And I'm happy to say that
Wow.
that a lot of the doubts, a lot of the naysayers were turned down. A few years later, every single news organization in Canada followed suit. And you see this now everywhere in the world, right? people starting to think that content is king. But how did you change that mindset to believe like content shouldn't be free? If people are willing to buy a book, then they should pay for a news article or some data sets or business value that they frequently use. Changing a mindset is something that takes time. And it was a huge challenge, more so in the sense that everyone was divided. Everyone had an opinion and approach of how to do it. And there was a unified voice around it.
You said 3.5 years, yeah? Just
Yeah,
to change everything.
you got it. It's a real challenge. But it was an eye opener in many ways as well, because you really had to convince people that who were from a different generation that if you can sell a printed product, a printed newspaper, why couldn't you sell the digital version of it, right? Changing that mindset was interesting because some of the arguments and viewpoints you encountered were really unique based on the generation of the individual they were coming from.
How do you learn? And what are your personal growth, let's say, pathways?
They've changed a lot over the decades. In my 20s and 30s, I learned by doing.
Mhm.
But I'd say, yeah, and you think you know everything and your way is the right way because you're young and you're full of energy, right? I'd say in my 40s, I started to learn through two different metrics. One was through trial and error, and one was actually going back and thinking about the things that elders and people with a lot more experience had told me in my 20s. And I just kind of brushed it off and thought, what do they know? Well, they know a lot, right? And if I had been a little bit more silent and a little bit more willing to listen, I probably would have learned those lessons earlier on. But that's also a trait that comes with age. So at this point in my life, I really learn by learning from your mistakes, right? Your postmortems, as I call them, can reveal a lot. And if you're really looking to learn, look at some of the things you did wrong and you had another pathway and you didn't choose it. Maybe start thinking about that. Start listening to your gut instinct a lot more because it's usually right. And when somebody who's been on this planet 60, 75 years tells you, "Hey, I've been around the block too and you might want to look at exploring this pathway," listen to them and try it because it's probably going to save you a lot of time and energy. That's how I learn. Yeah. There's other ways to learn. I read a lot. I try to take an hour every night to read something that's personally motivating, whether it's a biography, whether it's another business executive and what they've learned from their career pathway. And sometimes it's just leisure reading to kind of turn your mind around and get back to the basics, if you will.
I think, Katarina, a reflection on your learnings, it's as undervalued as building trust. I
It
think.
is, yeah. Yeah, we can all reflect and think about situations in the past that we could have approached with a little more nuancy. Um, One thing I have learned in the past 10 years, really in the past 10 years, I've noticed this about myself is that, before I used to rush to do, to do, to do. Now I won't do that anymore. I'll sit and I'll pause and I'll think about it. And then I'll think about, okay, why am I doing this? What is the rationale behind this? Is there another way? Right. And again, I don't know if that comes with age or through trial and error and kind of a slower approach to a longer vision, but I'm going to stop myself before I speak. I'm going to read, look at the data again, look at the data again, and then make a decision instead of rushing.
So this is a mastery level talking.
I hope so.
And I have the toughest challenge for every of our guests is how do we make this customer value management field and customer success management field famous, because this is an unknown field for many people.
Yeah, that is a challenge. I think what you guys are doing in the value management space is really indispensable. Some of the tips and tricks I've picked up from the book and some of your other vehicles have been game changers. And I think the fact that you're trying to pivot and position yourself in that space as the subject matter experts, as the forum and the leader, speaks volumes to what's missing, right? This is one of the things I love about Exasiter is like I read the vehicles and I read the comms pieces and I was like, interesting. This is something that nobody is really doubling down on to my knowledge, right? Um, Continuing to provide that value add is going to change as platforms change, as opportunities change. So it's something that's still fresh and top of mind, and it is gathering a lot of momentum right now, and conversations are happening around it. And I don't know the answer, Agidius. I look at various pieces that work for me, and I try to harmonize them into some sort of schedule or content package, if you will. Right? Value package is a better word, the value package, right? Because it can include different elements and you build this library of value that you're continually churning out and and providing the customer. But I think there's going to be shifts in the next couple of months, the next couple of years, and that value management repository is going to become much more necessary because life cycles are getting faster and customers have different options now than they did before, right? I think AI as well is going to really contribute to making this game changer the big unknown. How that's going to shape the conversation is something I'm curious to see. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear mongering, and I don't think that fear mongering is necessary. I think AI can really augment and kind of placate the conversation, but I'd like to see how as well.
Thank you, Katarina. It was a pleasure to talk to you today.
Yourself as well. Thank you, Agidius. And I wish you and Exasiter much success. You've got a strong advocate and a strong learner in myself. Curious to see where this is going to go. And thank you so much for the opportunity and the honor and privilege of speaking with you.
CVM Stories is produced by Exacaster. We help companies take their customer value management to the next level. To stay updated on our latest episodes, subscribe to the podcast or sign up for an email newsletter at exacaster.com/CVM Stories.